Om Sarvadharmasthapagastam Sarvadharmasvarupakah Acharyanam Mahacharyo Ramakrishna Te Namaha. We are reading here Sri Ramakrishna the Great Master's second part, and we are in the second chapter. The attitude of a sadhaka in the life of an incarnation. And we have seen that the main difference between the sadhanas is that he has no selfish desire. So he crosses the path more quickly than ours. And then he is ready to teach people. But second point is that he has to struggle. Because the gross desires may not be there, but the subtle forms of desires are there, and that subtler and subtlest many types of desires are present. And the main thing is that the pain felt by the incarnations or pure people or Jivan Muktas for even the slightest aberration in their mind is very acute. And so they struggle. And after that, we were told a special feature of Sri Ramakrishna, which we also should try to follow as much as possible. It was very natural in him. If something attracts him, something not of this world, if something suggests to his mind that there is a reality beyond, then his mind gets absorbed so much that he transcends for the time being this so-called real outside gross world. And the example was given that he was 6 or 7 years old, and when he was moving in the fields with the parched rice in a basket, he saw the one black cloud, and then he saw that cloud has covered the whole sky. That is the general description of Ashadasya Prathama Divase. And then he saw a flock of white cranes flying below that. That absolute contrast suggested to a mind that one reality appears as opposite. And so his mind got transcended the difference and got absorbed in that reality. Now here, the absorption is not about the thought of any particular form of God or goddess. It is about the abstract reality only, which appears in the opposite way. Second instance given was for a local deity, a Devi, which from the description is a Jagrita Devi, but secondary Devi, not the primary gods like Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. And for that, while singing her songs, he got so much absorbed that he became identified with that Devi. And that Prasanna, who was a pure lady, it struck her and she asked everybody to call not by Gadadhar or Gadai name, but by name of the deity. And so they started asking Vishalakshi Ma, and then he responded. So he had become Vishalakshi. That was the absorption in the thought of a local deity. And now we are coming to the third instance of the absorption. In both the two previous absorptions, he was not yet had the sacred thread or the Upnayan Sanskar was not done. And that is why we are going with the ladies. Now in the third instance, he becomes Shiva. One of the names you may say of the Trimurti. Now let us go to that incident slowly, in very much great detail, who organized, how it was organized, and what was the general tendency in Kamarpukur in those days. So, now we come to paragraph 21. Actually, the para heading is given much later, but what we are reading in para 20, there itself it has started. So, those who have the English book, page 140, we read only the first line, Vishalakshi. And now, another event in the life of Sri Ramakrishna bears ample testimony to the fact that since childhood, he ascended to high spiritual planes at times. So here he says high spiritual planes, because to become identified with Shiva, absolutely transcending the Srishti Sthiti Pralaya, or is called the god of Pralaya. So absolutely transcending these gross and subtle worlds. And so it was a very high plane, spiritual plane. It happened thus. How it happened? There lived a family of Suvarna Varnikas. They could have translated it as goldsmiths. Goldsmiths. So, a little to the southwest of the master's ancestral house at Kamarpukur. And the surname of that family was Pine. So, that is not directly mentioned there, but we have to infer. Suvarna Varnikas, goldsmiths, and the title Pine is found only in the Suvarna Varnikas. And that was the title of that family there. A family. That the Pines were then very prosperous at Thakur's time can be known even now from their brick-built Shiva temple decorated with artistic designs. One or two of the members of this family are still living at the time of Saradananda, but the buildings are all in ruins. It is said by the people of the village that the Pines were very rich then. The house was full of people. They were rich farmers also. So along with that Suvarna Varnika business, they were farmers also. Having extensive lands and a large number of cattle and plows. They had also a decent income from their trade. But the Pines were not rich like the landlords of the village. What you call the higher, lower, whatever you call, highest rich in the village was the landlords. Next to them, you may say, was the Pines. They belong to the upper middle class of society. What is the upper and lower middle class? What is middle class? Landlords are not middle class. They do not have to labor for their income. That is the higher class. Middle class means those who labor, earn money and live life. That is called middle class. And those who do not have sufficient money may be called the lower class. So this is the middle class. Now in middle class, somebody may be very rich, somebody may not be so rich. So we divide this middle class into upper and lower middle class. And so the Pines were middle class because they were doing farming, they were doing goldsmith business, and that is how they were earning money. So middle class. But very rich, so it is called upper middle class. Of society. Society counts class by money. The master of the Pine family was a very religious man. He never tried to convert his dwelling house into a brick-built one, though he was in a position to do so. That shows his devotion. He built a brick-built temple for Shiva, but not for his own residence, though he was rich. He always lived in a two-storied house of mud walls. So mud with some grass or leaves in that, hay, in that way the upper story is built. Maybe some wooden planks and like that is the roof of the first floor, ground floor on which the upper floor stands. So in Bengal or in villages we can find there are two-storied houses built with mud, of mud walls. Footnote says made of bamboo, wood, straw and earth but no bricks. Because bricks will not, that strength will not bear the bricks weight. But he got bricks burned, employed a good mason and got the temple beautifully built. This shows his devotion. His name was Rasik Lal. He had no sons but had many daughters. Rasik Lal? Oh, is some error or second name? We do not know. The Bengali says Kartar Nam Sita Nath Chilo. And we always know that Sita Nath was devoted to Thakur. Now here, the name is given as Rasik Lal. Maybe he had two names, but that is the fact which I am pointing before you. In the original Bengali and in all the translations in Indian languages, I believe, the name is Sita Nath Pine. And here in English, it is Rasik Lal. He had no sons but had many daughters. We do not know why all the daughters, although married, always lived in their father's house. That is called Ghar Jamai, and the rich people do like that. They make the son-in-laws live in with them. And so though the girls have married and are grown up, but they still continue to stay with the father. We are told that the youngest of them reached her youth when the master was 10 or 11 years of age. So she might have 15, 16. All the daughters were handsome. Be clear? Handsome is generally used for males. Oh. Now there is a lot of variation between this and English. Lot of variation. He says he had no son. Then was this Rasik Lal not Sitana? I will tell what is in Bengali now. কর্তার নাম সীতানাথ ছিল, the head of the family was named সীতানাথ। তার 7 পুত্র और 8 কন্যা ছিল। He had 7 sons and 8 daughters. And here he says there was no son. He had 7 sons and 8 daughters. And when Thakur's age was 10 or 12, here 10 or 11. Lot of variation is there. एवं विवाहिता হইলেও কন্যাগুলি কি কারণে বলিতে পারি না, সর্বদাই পিতৃলয়ে বাস করিত। ওটা ঠিক আছে। শুনিয়াছি ঠাকুরের যখন 10 বছর বয়স তখন উহাদের সর্বকনিষ্ঠা যৌবনে পদার্পণ করিয়াছে। We have to imagine the age maybe 15. কন্যাগুলো সকলে রূপবতী। No, we should not say in English beautiful. Handsome is generally used for male members. Anyway, we can use another word, good looking. Good looking. If you do not use the word beautiful, we can use the word. All the daughters were good looking and were devoted to the gods and the Brahmins. So Brahmins represent spirituality or religion. And so those who are devoted to religion from the lower classes, they are all devoted to Brahmins and gods, of course. For the modern readers, I have to explain this. They had much affection for the boy Gadai, their neighbor. We have seen this name Gadai because his father had a dream in the Gaya where the Lord name is Gadadhar, that I will be born in your house as your son. And so, when the son was born, he was named as Gadadhar and short Gadai. They had much affection for the boy Gadai, their neighbor. The master spent much of his time in that religious family during his boyhood. And even now, one is told of many sports of the master in the house of the pines, while in high planes of consciousness. So in their house, he found a suitable atmosphere, and so he was in high plane of consciousness, and that is why he was spending time there. Not because there were many girls. But we have heard from the master himself of the event which we now describe. So, others have told Saradananda Swamiji about many Leelas, but this particular event is told by Thakur himself. Now, a description of the pines. It seemed that the devotees of Vishnu and those of Shiva lived together at Kamarpukur without bearing any ill will towards each other. Speciality of Kamarpukur, because in Bengal otherwise Vaishnavas, Shaivas and Shaktas were too much divided and practically enemies of each other. But they were living without bearing any ill will towards each other in Kamarpukur. Even now, the annual 72-hour singing of the glories of the names of Vishnu, 3 days and nights continuously, they should chant the names of Vishnu. That is called Gajan. Garjan in Bengali, Gajan. Its name is given here. Is like the No, that is Vishnu names like the Gajan of Shiva. So, Shiva, how much time they have not described. Maybe Shivaratri, 1 day and night, but occasionally, continuously, they chant the name of Shiva, that is called Gajan. Similarly, for Vishnu, 3 days and nights, they used to sing songs. He is like the Gajan of Shiva, celebrated with great pomp, that Vishnu's name. But the Shiva temples and other places where Shiva is installed, not regular temple, but Shiva is installed, are greater than those of Vishnu. So facts of Kamarpukur that mostly they were Shaivas, but there were Vaishnavas also, and some were both, and they lived in amity. Many of the Suvarna Vanikas are bigoted Vaishnavas. So, in general, Kamarpukur, they lived without enmity. But among the Suvarna Vanikas, they are bigoted Vaishnavas. Bigoted means Vishnu alone is God. That is called bigoted. The Vaishnava faith prevailed to a great extent among the people of this class since Lord Nityananda, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associate. Nityananda, he was not Lord, no? That is the old English translation. The Nityananda Prabhu. Nityananda Prabhu. Prabhu means my master. God is called Prabhu. Now Nityananda was the close associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so he is also called Prabhu. Here, Lord Nityananda. We could have said Nityananda, the close associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, since Nityananda initiated Uddharan Datta and delivered him from worldly bondage, so among the Suvarna Vanikas, there were Datta title also. And Nityananda gave him liberation or freedom or spiritual elevation. So the Suvarna Vanikas became Vaishnavas in general. But two things, Kamarpukur, Shiva Vishnu amity. Suvarna Vanikas, after Nityananda initiated Uddharan Datta, begotten Vishnu. But Sitanath Pain and his family were not begotten. But the Pines of Kamarpukur were the devotees of both Shiva and Vishnu. On the one hand, the aged master of the Pine family used to take the name of Hari thrice a day as prescribed, Trisandhya Harinam. And on the other, he installed Shiva and observed the vow of Shivratri every year. Shivratri is supposed to be the eternally going on. Some people say it is the marriage of Shiva and Parvati, but all the stories assume that that is going on. And people worshipped a special worship on that day. Actually, every month there is a Shivratri. The 14th day of the dark fortnight is Shivratri. But this, which comes in Falguni Thakur birthday, so before that in March, that is called Mahashivratri. So, every year means Mahashivratri. Observe the vow of Shivratri. Now, this is there in many people, I find they are more inclined toward the Vaishnava type, but on Mondays, they chant Shiva Mahimna Stotra. I lived many days in South means Tamil Nadu, and there I found something very different. The Vaishnavas there are very bigoted, very bigoted. They do not go to Shiva temples. Shaivas there are broader in comparison. And by names, the Vaishnavas will never have a Shiva name, where the Shaivas have Vaishnava names. So that is the fact in Tamil Nadu. Here in Bengal, it was this type. At that time, a dramatic performance was arranged so that it might help devotees keep vigil at night. So Shivratri is in the night and people have to keep vigil, so drama was arranged. While acting as Shiva on the occasion of the Shivratri, the master had ecstasy for the third time. Once on the occasion of the Shivratri, there was an arrangement of dramatic performance. The troupe belonged to the neighboring village. They were to play a few scenes indicative of Shiva's greatness, and the play was to begin about half an hour after dusk. At dusk, it was learned that the boy of the troupe who was to play Shiva's role was seriously ill. No one else could be found to play that part. The proprietor gave up all hopes and proposed with humility that the performance be postponed, that means not that day. What was to be done? How could the vigil be kept during the night? The elderly people sat together for consultation. They sent word to the proprietor asking him whether he could conduct the drama that night if a person could be found to play the part of Shiva. A reply came in the affirmative. The village council consulted again as to who might be asked to act as Shiva. Although Gadai was young, he knew many songs of Shiva and he had the appropriate looks for playing the part. So it was settled that he should be requested. As regards the speaking of a few words while playing that part, it would be managed by the proprietor somehow. Gadadhar was approached, and when he saw that all were eager, he agreed. There is a little other description in other part of Great Master that he was busy worshipping Shiva and his friend, the landlord's son Gaya Vishnu. He came and said that they want you for Shiva. He first objected that I am worshipping Shiva. Then the friend said that if you act as Shiva, you will have to think of Shiva only. So there will be no breach of your worshipping Shiva. And then Gadai accepted. Also, this is the additional fact that everybody is eager, so he accepted. Dharmadas Laha, that is coming here. Dharmadas Laha, the landlord of the village, was a close friend of the master's father. So his eldest son Gaya Vishnu and the master also became friends. When Gaya Vishnu came to know that his friend would act as Shiva, little variation in the narration, he himself made Gadadhar agree. When Gaya Vishnu came to know that his friend would act as Shiva, he and his friends began to dress him accordingly. So makeup was done by local people, not by the troupe, because they would come in time. The master put on the dress of Shiva, sat in the green room, and was thinking of Shiva when he was called to appear on the stage. One of his friends came to lead him there. Called by his friend, the master rose and without looking in any direction, in a preoccupied state of mind, approached the stage with a sedate and slow step and stood there motionless. By the time he has gone into samadhi, the audience felt a vague, indescribable divine emotion and were filled with joy and wonder when they saw the master in that dress, bedecked with ashes and matted hair, with a calm and dignified gait, and in a fixed and motionless posture. They felt particularly charmed to witness that heavenly, indrawn and fixed gaze and that gentle smile on his lips. He has become Shiva already. As the villagers are wont to do, they suddenly cried out the name of Hari. That is the method in Bengal. Shiva or any religious gathering, when they feel elated, they say Hari Bol, like that. They cried out the name of Hari. Some of the women uttered the auspicious sound of Ulu. This I find found common in Bengal and Tamil Nadu, though the places are two totally distant places in India. The women make a peculiar movement of their lips and tongue, and ululululu like that the sound comes. And this sound is taken to be very auspicious sound. In Tamil Nadu, I found when a new temple installation or something, this ulu sound is there. So in Bengal, on auspicious occasions, the women do this ulu sound and men chant Hari. Some of the women uttered the auspicious sound of ulu and some blew conch shells. That is also a sign of auspiciousness. Afterwards, in order to restore order in the audience, the proprietor began reciting hymn to Shiva even before the noise subsided. That means noise started, but he thought that better start something. Although the audience became a little calm, they made signs too and nudged one another, whispering in low tones, Bravo, how beautiful Gadai looks. We never thought the lad would act the part of Shiva so well. It will be very good if we can secure the boy somehow and form a yatra troupe of our own. Yatra means village religious dramas in open theatre. And so on and so forth. They started talking to each other. But Gadadhar was all the while standing in that same posture. Moreover, incessant streams of tears were flowing down his cheek. That is the sign of love. Identity, love, and tears flowing. Some time passed this way, but Gadadhar did not speak or move. Then the proprietor and one or two elderly men of the village went to the boy and saw that his hands and feet were insensitive because the prana has been withdrawn from there. And that he had no external consciousness at all. The noise then doubled. Some cried out, water, water, sprinkle water over his eyes and face. That has become unconscious. Some said, fan him. Some others, an ecstatic influence of Shiva has come on him, utter his name, Shiva name. So that is, some people understood that. While some others murmured, the boy spoiled the whole amusement. So they are looking all this as a part of the amusement to spend the night. The boy spoiled the whole Saradananda Swami described the various minds of people. The boy spoiled the whole amusement. It is certain that the play cannot continue now. At last, the audience dispersed when the boy could not be brought to consciousness by any means. Some people carried Gadadhar home on their shoulders. That ecstasy, we are told, did not come to an end that night. In spite of much effort, they did not know how to make that effort. And there was much agitation in the house. Or he was passed beyond. He regained normal state the next day after sunrise. Footnote says, some say that he was in that ecstatic state continuously for 3 days. 3 days or at least one full night. So, this is a very, very special feature in Sri Ramakrishna, and that is why we call him Sarva Deva Devi Swarup. He thinks of any Deva or Devi and he becomes that. So now we enter the chapter 3rd. These are not called sadhana's mind. These are the nature of his mind favorable for sadhana before he has undertaken any sadhana. So his prerequisites of sadhana have been described. But sadhana or the attitude of a sadhaka starts at a particular point, is manifested at a particular point rather. So we have to see that now. So the chapter 3rd name is the first manifestation of the attitude of a sadhaka. Attitude of a sadhaka. In Bengali, some people want the Bengali name, Tritiya Adhyaya, Sadhak Bhaver Pratham Vikas. Vikas is not development in Bengali, Vikas is manifestation. Further examples of master's absorption in spiritual moods in childhood. So before we actually come to that point, some more events. Thakur's nature of the mind is being discussed now. And that is Saradananda Swamiji's speciality. See what we can follow. See how much we can change. So this is incarnation. But when he is born as man, so how human can become divine? So that requires special characteristics of the mind, which we have to earn. We can earn and we have to earn. May not be to the degree where Sri Ramakrishna did, but we must follow him. So, Saradan Swamiji everywhere, he starts with describing his mind. And as a part of that, he described some more occasions when he became absorbed. Further examples of master's absorption in spiritual moods in childhood. Besides the events already mentioned, many other facts regarding the master's absorption in spiritual moods in childhood are known. We get an indication of that nature of his mind in connection with many small matters. Now, a very different type. Take, for example, the village potter was making images of Shiva, Durga, and other deities. The master went there with his friends in the course of a walk. He looked on the images for some time and suddenly said, "What is that? Do the eyes of a god look like that? They should be made thus." Saying so, he explained to the potter the manner in which the line should be fashioned and the eyes portrayed, so that the expression of superhuman power, compassion, inwardness, and bliss may be shown. So, God or singular or plural possesses superhuman power, compassion to humanity, inwardness, and bliss, because the very fact that is God is always accompanied with bliss. Now, these expressions should come by the eyes. And bliss may be shown in the eyes and endow the image with a living divine look. All were amazed to think how the boy Gadadhar could understand and explain all this without being taught that. So he had not joined any potter school or drawing or painting, but he found that. But none could find out the reason. So that he has put that under absorption in divine mood, but is of a different type. Or desiring to worship some deity in boyish play. He was a boy, so boyish play, but the play was worshipping some deity. Or desiring to worship some deity in boyish play with his friends, he made the image of that deity or delineated it on canvas. So painting and murti, shilpa, both he had from his inborn nature. On canvas so beautifully that people seeing it came to the conclusion that it was the handiwork of a skillful potter or painter. Because they are taught how this will happen, how this will happen. But the boy, without going to any such school, had this inborn. Again, a voluntary and unexpected utterance of the master. Voluntary, that means people have not asked, but he is telling that. Unexpected utterance of the master to somebody removed a very long-standing doubt from his mind. He had a doubt, long-standing. He had not asked anybody, or he did not get answer from others. He had not asked Thakur about it. But suddenly Thakur said something which removed that doubt. The latter got the clue and the power to regulate his future life, wondering whether it was a chosen ideal in the person of Gadai that out of compassion showed him the path. So the Ishtadev may tell the devotee, like that Gadadhar spoke. So they think Ishtadevata is within him. Or else, the boy Gadai astonished all by solving with one word the problem which scholars well versed in the scriptures had failed to solve. That we have learnt in other place in Guru Bhav that there was a discussion in a Shraddha meeting and the Pandits could not solve a problem and Gadadhar was sitting on the lap of a Pandit and he told, may not be like this. And everybody agreed. So that is referred here. So all this shows his spiritual inclination, his spiritual sanskaras, if you like to call it, the spiritual bent of his mind. Now he starts describing the mind. These are events he has told, and now he analyzes the mind. 6 classes of those events of the master's life. So events themselves are general stated, now classified into 6 categories. That we have to follow, that we can follow. It is not true that, so he comes to that point, it is not true that every one of the wonderful events of the master's early life, which we heard, proved the manifestation of his divine power as he passed into high planes of consciousness, like the previous 3. Although some of them were of this nature, we may classify the others into 6 broad divisions. That is how we have to understand the mind by analysis. Namely, those indicative of his wonderful memory. The pure mind has pure memory. Wonderful memory. Of his strong power of judgment. Even as a child or a small boy, he could judge properly. We have to understand how that happens, what was his criteria, and we have to learn that. Of his steadfastness. So when he comes to a course of life, he sticks to it steadfastly. We are also to do that. And strong determination. Steadfastness follows strong determination. Of his infinite courage. Infinite courage, once he decides upon a point, he is not afraid of even death. He will go into it. Infinite courage. We have to have that courage. Without that, we cannot proceed. Of his love of merriment. Now, love of merriment comes in a pure mind. And of his unlimited love and compassion for people. Unlimited love and compassion. So, these 6 things are stated. Memory, power of judgment, steadfastness and strong determination is one. Inherent infinite courage, love of merriment, and unlimited love and compassion. But now, 6 have been described. But in following that, he shortens them into 3. 3 are the basic characters of his mind. And the events of the world, when they strike on them, produce 6 feelings. So, following, we have to concentrate on the 3. But purity, selflessness, and unique faith were found running through all of them. Purity, no sort of impurity is there, no selfishness is there, no sense of enjoyment is there. Merriment is different. It makes others happy. Selflessness and unique faith. Unique. Faith in the scriptures, absolute. were found running through all of them. It looks as if his mind was naturally made of faith, purity, and selflessness, and the various actions and reactions of the world in it gave rise from time to time to those six things. Two waves of memory, judgment, determination, courage, merriment, love, and compassion. The reader will have a correct understanding of what we say when we give a few examples here. So we have stated the principles and now showing the examples we can understand and try to follow. An example of his wonderful memory. There had been in the village a theatrical performance on the theme of Rama's or Krishna's life. Many people, including Gadadhar, had witnessed it. All of them forgot the songs and the sacred words of the Puranas the next day and were busy following their selfish ends. That is what happened. That is why the memory is covered. But there was no end to the waves of spiritual emotions produced by them in the mind of Gadai. So it has gone deep because the field is ready, it produces spiritual feelings. The boy assembled his friends in the neighboring mango grove in order to rehearse them and enjoy the bliss thereof. So he retained, became the director, chief actor, and he taught his friends and did a drama. He made all his friends get by heart as far as possible the parts of different characters of the play, as far as possible the boy, and took upon himself the leading role and began to enact the drama. Simple-hearted cultivators ploughing in the neighboring fields were charmed to see that play of the boys and wondered how, after hearing them only once, they could get by heart almost all the words and songs of the play that were taught by Gadadhar. So, example of memory. An example of strong determination. At the time of his investiture, that is a main incident. Two incidents are mixed here, and it is described in great detail in the Balya Jivan. So that reference is given page 54. Let us read here and then go there. At the time of his investiture with the sacred thread, the boy persisted against the custom of his family and society that he must have his first ceremonial alms from a blacksmith woman, Dani by name. Dani is blacksmith and she acted as the midwife for Gadadhar's birth. And she had a doting love for him. So she asked him that, you see, after the sacred thread, one has to beg food from somebody like the mother. That is the tradition. Now Gadadhar was a Brahmin. And so somebody, aunt, or in English the general name is aunt, maybe mother's sister, maybe mother's brother's wife, maybe father's brother's wife, like that. Father's sister. So somebody close relation other than the mother. From that, the first bhiksha has to be taken. So here only this much is given. So when the Dhani requested him, he agreed. Now the not known to other people. Now the time of sacred investiture has come. And he told his elder brother, who was his guardian, that I will tell Bhiksha from her. He objected. And Gadadhar persisted. He said, if I break my promise, then the person who becomes untruthful has no right for the sacred thread. Then this Dharmadas Laha, the friend of his father, he intervened and told his elder brother that though your family may not have such, but in Brahmin's family, somewhere this has been done, so no blame will come to you. You accept what Gadadhar is telling. That is how it came about. So we need not go to page 54. Or second point about Dhani. Or charmed with her affection and devotion, and being aware of the desire of her heart. She has not expressed it, but is aware of the desire of her heart. The boy forgot the restrictions of society. Brahmins never took food from other castes. Snatched curry, sauce, etc., cooked by that woman of low caste, and ate them. In great fear, Dhani forbade him to do it, but could not make the boy visit. First, Dhani had requested him for bhiksha, but that is not cooked food. The brahmacharis have to cook their own meals taken from what is called shida. But here, food cooked by her, which later on we will find Gadadhar himself had become very strict about it. But in childhood, he saw the love and devotion and threw all custom to the wind and snatched that food from her. An example of his infinite courage. Fear always arises in the minds of the boys of towns and villages when they see Naga fakirs, naked sannyasis, Naga fakirs, with their matted hair and bodies covered with ashes. There is a belief current everywhere in Bengal that those fakirs entice young boys, or when opportunity arises, they abduct them to distant places and add to their own number. That is, people believe it is not happening. Groups of such fakirs and vairagis, fakirs are sannyasis, vairagis are Vaishnava sannyasis, traveled daily in those days by the path to the south of Kamarpukur leading to Puri, the abode of Jagannath. They would come to the village, beg their food, rest there for a day or two, and then start for their destination. Although Gadai's friends remembered that tradition and were frightened, that tradition of boys are abducted, he was not a person to be afraid of this. He mixed with the group of mendicants as soon as he saw them and pleased them by his service and sweet conversation. He used to spend much time with them in order to observe their conduct and behavior. So that is what he is doing. Requested lovingly by them, he took on some days the food offered by them to their deity before he returned home to tell it to his mother. Desirous of being dressed like them, out of love for the holy men, he one day put on tilakas all over his body and tearing the new piece of cloth given by his parents into kopina, loincloth. Kopina and loincloth, he says, wore them in their fashion and came to his mother. So courage, not afraid of Nagas or those are abduction and behaving like them. Examples of his love for merriment. Many of the people of the low class in the village did not know to read Ramayana and the Mahabharata. When they had a mind to hear those books read out, they invited a Brahmin or one of their own class who could explain the epics to them. So Brahmins should know, but some of their caste also learned that. So they called them. When that person arrived, they offered him water to wash his feet, a smoke of tobacco, a good seat to sit on while reading, and lacking this, a new mat. If the good seat was not there, a new mat. Honored thus, he swelled with pride and egotism. Fond of merriment, the keenly intelligent boy observed how he occupied an elevated seat before the audience, and how many were the odd gestures and tones with which he read the books and displayed his superiority to them. All these the boy would sometimes mimic before others with a grave face, which would give rise to a great fun and peals of laughter. So hypocrisy he caught immediately. Natural constitution of the master's mind. So he has described events telling of those traits. Now he sums up, generalizes. Memory, determination, courage, love of merriment, he has described. Natural constitution of the master's mind. By study of these facts of the master's early life, we realize the nature of the mind with which he was equipped to undertake spiritual discipline. So that is the fitness for spiritual discipline. We feel that such a mind could not but accomplish whatever it undertook, would never forget what it heard, and would at once throw away mercilessly whatever it came to know to be an obstacle in the path to the realization of the desired end. We realize that such a heart would perform all actions in the world, placing firm reliance on God, on itself, and on the divine nature hidden within all being. Faith, reliance on God, on Himself, and the goodness in the heart of all human beings. It is God only in three places. No ideas having the slightest tinge of narrow mindedness would be acceptable to it. That is a great thing. Let alone mean, impure ones. So, mean, impure ideas would not come, narrow mindedness would not come. And love, purity, and compassion alone would regulate it all the time in all matters. No? These are things for us to absorb. It will also be realized that no idea, either within his own heart or within those of others, would be able to deceive him by disguising its nature. So when we become purer and purer, nothing can disguise its nature. And we have to be analyzingly alert. Before proceeding to study his sadhana, we shall be able to understand their uniqueness if we closely remember what has been said about the constitution of his heart and mind. So from here, we have to go to his sadhana. Om Sarvadharma Sthapakasvam Sarvadharma Swarupakaha Acharyanam Acharyo Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha Om Shanti 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 Hare Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. From there, we have to come to that manifestation of spiritual mood. So, from that point itself to 7 in the next chapter. Oh, I didn't.